It's still very early days with me and this belt squat machine, but so far, man, I'm in absolute love. It is an amazing piece of equipment. Whoever invented it, I think it was Louis Simmons that invented it. I could be wrong though. Whoever it was, genius, and it just goes to show you that there have been many minds before us who have thought about all of these problems that we have been thinking about many times before for their own problems, and they've worked around, combined steel work, welding, and the love of bodybuilding, powerlifting, all that stuff. Amazing machine. And Bells of Steel have hooked me up majorly. This is the thing about presents. I've never been a fan of presents. I've always said, I'm a fully grown man. I don't need presents, man. I can get whatever I want, which is true. But a fully grown man has a whole host of responsibilities. And a fully grown man often feels guilty in buying himself something. So oftentimes, we've got kids, wife, and whatever, and we always, look after them, and we never think about us. So there's always guilt associated with buying the GHD, the squat machine, another barbell, all that. At least that's in my case. So when somebody gets you a present, it takes that guilt out of the equation, and it ends up being just a present. And I think that's the power of presents. Another thing that I think about in the last few days when it comes to presents is that every time I look at this squat machine, I think of the Bells of Steel guys, the owner, the fellow that contacted me, and there's always a warm feeling. And so when you give somebody a present, they're probably going to think about you every single time they use this thing or look at this thing or whatever the case might be, whatever the present is. That's the power of presents. And I'm loving mine. I'm absolutely loving it. I've been thinking about it nonstop ever since. Today, yesterday I decided to give it a rest because of I'm wasted. Today I felt a little bit better, so I thought I'd come in again and hammer away. Today I explored, as I absolutely love to do when it comes to this. So, normal squats, normal belt squats. But then I added another element to it. I decided to hold it at the top. Something that I noticed from the very first rep that I did is that there's a lot of tension in the glutes at the top. And that's because the belt is around your lower back or kind of lower back hip region. And what that does, it pulls your lumbar spine. It wants to pull the lumbar spine into hyperextension, into lumbar lordosis. And so in order for you to resist that force, you need to clench your glutes to prevent that. And you also need to engage your anterior core, your six-pack muscle. If you let go of the glutes, probably mostly glutes, you end up in this hyperextension of the lumbar spine, and it changes the whole movement pattern. I mean, yes, you can turn off your glutes with this, but when you turn your glutes on, the pelvis restores itself somewhat, fights those forces of lumbar lordosis, and you feel a glute contraction and a quad contraction as you're going through the range of motion. So I decided to do sets of 10, and then at the top, hold it for a minute. And yeah, for sure, the glutes get turned on. And it's a great feeling, and I feel like it's a really nice primer for squats and deadlifts because we can all use more glute mental connection. It makes us more stacked, more kind of in tune. It makes the core work less when the glutes are on because, like I said, the anterior core also fights that lumbar lordosis. So if you can ease the anterior core responsibility to fight those forces, then you'll be in good stead. And obviously the glutes are way more powerful than any freaking core muscle. They are the powerhouse of the whole thing. So I did that for a few sets. I liked it, but I kind of thought I really should be adding a lot more plates and holding that at the top if I'm just doing the glute contraction at the top. But then I can't squat more than 2 plates at the moment. I can't. I don't know. It's weird, but it's really hard for me, this machine. After I did that, I thought, let me do some pauses. Once again, just brainstorming here. So at the top, I feel like there's a lot of glute tension. At the bottom, I feel like there's a lot of quad tension. So I thought, why don't I pause? So I started pausing, and I realized that I was bottoming out of the machine. So then I put a couple of little blocks that I have that I use for block pulls, and that kind of solved that problem somewhat. And I started doing pause squats. I ended up doing 3 sets of 60, then I ended up doing 3 sets of 80 as well. I don't think I recorded the 80s. But my God, did that put the quads on the map, and automatically made me think, man, I've not done any sort of pause work for quite some time, straight bar, SSB, whatever. I haven't done a lot of it. But with the belt squat, it removes the lumbar extension or hip extension moment arms. So when the bar's resting on top of your spine and you pause that thing at the bottom, there is a long lever between the bar and the fulcrum, which is your pelvis. So there's a lot of quad work when you pause, absolutely, just like there is with the belt squat. But there's a huge component of the lumbar, or not lumbar, just spinal erectors fighting it, or the hip extension component of it. So when you do ATG high bar pause squats, yes, there's a lot of quads, but your core also gets absolutely hammered. With the belt squat, you remove the hip extension component out of it completely, and what you have is just a pure quad massacre. Absolute quad massacre. And I did 6 sets, and I'm absolutely fried through the quads. The contraction that you get out of a full knee bend, out of that belt squat at the bottom, is insane. Absolutely insane. I will be doing this again. Pause everything with the belt squat. Removes the bounce, and that initial drive from the quads. My God, does that put the quads on the map? It's absolutely filthy. Which makes me think, when you're doing any sort of ATG squats, high bar, ATG squats, whether it's pause or not pause, there's a huge component of quads, but like we just talked about, but also there is a huge component of erectors. Because think about the angles that your body goes into when it's an ATG squat. There's a full knee bend, okay? So that's a little bit different to parallel squats. There's a full knee bend. But also there is an absolutely full, at least the way I squat, full hip bend. So then you have like these acute angles in the knee and the hip, and you go weight on your back, and then you have to come out of that. And so I think this is why ATG squats, at least the way I squat, carry over so well to deadlifts, because of the huge hip extension requirements for you to come out of an ATG squat. The angles involved in your hip, the spine needs to work so hard to keep straight. And those spinal erectors work way, way, way more harder in a high bar ATG squat than they do in a low bar parallel squat. The angles are just more acute. And so that more tension, that mechanical disadvantage that you get in an ATG squat carries over so well to deadlifting, which is why I think I don't even have to freaking touch deadlifts, and I come back and I pull very good weight for me. Very, very good. I hit 262.5 the other day after deadlifting for like 4 months. That's because every single day that I come into squat, there are acute angles happening through my hip and my knee joint. The knee joint is probably not as important as the hip joint, because that hip joint acuteness just means that your spinal erectors have to work so hard. Your psoas needs to work so hard. Your core needs to work so hard, because everything is trying to make that lumbar spine round. Everything. The forces just want that lower back to blow out, and you have to resist that. And that resistance that you put forth in an ATG squat are so much easier, those forces, when you're deadlifting. And this is why there's a huge discrepancy when you deadlift and when you're ATG high bar squat. The mechanical disadvantage gets offsetted so much in a deadlift that you end up putting more weight on the bar. So this is kind of what I was thinking about, and it's true. Like in my mind, that's the difference between ATG and not ATG squats, is the spinal erectors get absolutely minced. And it's a progression, it's a continuum. You got an ATG squat high bar, and then somewhere between that and a deadlift number is a low bar squat. So it's a continuum. And then you see the French, how they squat, it's a damn near deadlift. They pull the bar like at the mid back. It's not even a low bar. It's like low bar. And so, they're even closer to a deadlift on the continuum of movement than a normal low bar. So it's all continuum. It's all, and powerlifting in general is a sport of manipulation. You're manipulating forces, physics, and it's less so about strength as much it is about manipulation of some of these angles. There are very, very good people at the top of the game, people that are very, very strong and are able to manipulate some of these angles, and these guys are the world champions. But, somewhere through the ranks, you will find people that are much weaker than you, but they just have the ability to manipulate angles and feel comfortable in those angles, and they lift more weight. So it's sometimes the bar can lie in a way, because people are not entering acute angles in any point, whether it's the elbow or the shoulder or the hip or the knee. People are trying to avoid acute angles, and so they end up doing kind of like quarter squats in a way, or quarter benches in a way, because they're hiding some of these leverages through physics in a way, if that makes sense. But with the belt squat machine, it is folding you up fully, you pause, and then you come out of it in the absence of erectors. So it ends up being like the godliest freaking quad exercise you can think of. It's just an unbelievable piece of equipment. I'm so freaking happy about it, man. It feels great. All right, guys, let me get out of here. I appreciate all of you guys like always, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.